and slide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see. I'll pay my dues, time after time, after my sentence, committed no crime, and bad mistakes, I've made a few.
I was struck by the band's image, the band's music. They had their own sound. You know, all the major bands in the world had their own sound. The Rolling Stones, the Pink Floyd, Queen, The Who. You can easily identify them.
All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio Goo, Radio Gaga. All we hear is Radio Gaga, Radio.
There was no way there was a band look. Roger was the classic, good-looking rock star. Brian was this astrophysicist, guitar player in white clogs and a bearskin. And there was Fred with this God-given voice, mincing about the stage in these ludicrous clothes. And Deacon was, you know, a bass player. It just shouldn't have worked at all. None of it should have worked. But it absolutely all did, look-wise, song-wise, vibe-wise.
I want to break free. I want to break free. I want to break free from your lies. You're so self-satisfied. I don't need you.
You look at this body of work that they gradually amassed, and you see that in the album chart, for example, it's them and the Beatles.
Right from day one, Queen were out addressing the audience. Freddie was right there. They had a terrific sense of putting themselves across on stage, and it made them stand out at the time because a lot of the other bands didn't really care about that kind of stuff.
The key thing that I learnt very early on was that, one, that they were definitely a band and they all had a say in things. But I also learned that Freddie was the man because Freddie had named the band, he'd done the Queen logo, and he was also the one who was most enthusiastic about the issue of image. Probably because he'd had an art school training, whereas Roger was a dentist and Brian and John were into maths and science.
When I first met Freddie was, I think, in 1969. So he was still Freddie Balsara, not Freddie Mercury as yet. He was super confident and almost to the point of arrogance, and coming away with a distinct impression of this person I just met. That in later years I realised it wasn't the person underneath at all.
We came over from Zanzibar to England in 1964. We were just thrilled when we decided to come to England. And then, of course, he had gone to Ealing College of Art, and there he finished his fashion and designing. And even at that time, he wasn't too sure what he's going to do, if he's going for fashions or if he's going for music.
And then I realised that the moment I finished college, my interests were in music. All I wanted to do was music. So I set upon the fact that, oh no, I'm going to try and make it as a singer.
I suppose when I came to university, I met Brian very soon after coming up, and we got on very well. And I met another guy that Brian knew, who was an art student, and called Tim Staffel. And we formed a band called Smile.
It wasn't a very long-lived band, Smile, and after all, one must remember that it was only a semi-pro outfit. It only lasted for maybe a year, 18 months, and then I wanted to move on, and then maybe it was another year between Freddie taking over and and the kind of identity of the band being crystallised.
Freddie arrived on the scene as best mate of Tim Staffel. And over the course of the next sort of couple of years, he started joining different bands. But I think all along he really wanted to come in with Brian and myself, and he saw that as a sort of strong unit.
Freddie really was such a wonderful additional ingredient and a catalyst. I guess he shared a lot of our dreams and he had a few more of his own.
I was, if anything, an outsider. I felt that in a way because the band was already formed. You know, they had a few songs, they had the name Queen, they'd rehearsed, they'd had 2 or 3 other bass players before me. So when I first joined, I was fairly quiet and just fitted in, learnt the songs, and really tried not to upstage Brian and Freddie too much.
We played a lot of gigs in the beginning, but we'd been through it before. Smile had done that and got nowhere, playing pubs and clubs and colleges and stuff. So we strictly limited what we were going to do as Queen, and we devoted more time to rehearsing and to writing and being ready for when that moment came, if it was ever going to come.
Keep yourself alive. Keep yourself alive. Oh, take you all your time and the money to keep me satisfied.
I think we had this insane belief in ourselves, really. From the beginning, we had this confidence that we had something so special that it would get through in the end.
Keep yourself alive. Come on. Keep yourself alive.
Confidence earlier on is very, very important, and so we had that sort of confidence in actually knowing that we will get through to the public.
They wanted to own the place, the world, yeah, without doubt. Hence, we saw that, we understood that, and that's why Trident got behind it and put so much into it. When you look back at 1973, 4, 5, those periods, we're talking about £190,000 it came to. I mean, it's the biggest investment any pop band at that time had ever had. It was more money than the Stones and the Beatles had combined invested in them.
Hail me, you lords and lady preachers. I descend upon your earth from the skies. I command your very souls, you unbelievers. Bring before me what is mine, the MCs arrive.
We actually went at it of, we have to have an identifiable sound, which is going to be the Queen sound, that anyone can hear as soon as the record goes on. You'll be able to hear who it is. And all the great bands forever have always had that. And it doesn't, I mean, I'm going back forever, like right back to Sinatra, through to Elvis, through to the Stones, through to the Beatles. So you can, every time you hear one of their songs go on, even if you've never heard it before, you can hear instantly who it is. When we started, say after 6 months, if suddenly jazz became the next big thing completely. I mean, we wouldn't have suddenly started playing jazz. We would have said, no, this is what we want to do. Because, I mean, we can't play jazz anyway.
Perfume came naturally from Paris. Naturally. Because she couldn't care less, fastidious and precise. She's a killer queen, gunpowder gelatine, dynamite with a laser beam, guaranteed to blow your mind.
It was always part of this vision that we had, if we could create a sound in the studio and live where you had this incredibly brilliant, bright, broad block of harmonies, and then underneath you still had the heaviness. It really took until the Killer Queen single for the distinctive Queen sound to emerge. Killer Queen, when you first heard it, was a real revelation. That was the Freddie Mercury contribution, the Roger Taylor vocals, the merging of the musicianship of the guitarist and the bass player into this unique whole. It was fabulous.
She's a killer queen, gunpowder gelatine, dynamite with a laser.
They just had their own style, and they were instantly recognised on the radio, whatever, because of their vocal harmonies, Freddie's voice, Brian's guitar playing, whatever. As a band, they all fitted together so well.
It was a bit of courage on our part, in a sense, to go with this instinct that we should be something different, and as well as having the music right, we should be getting it across. It should be a show.
The image that they were trying to put forward, which is the image of the flamboyancy and the big robes and all that sort of stuff, that came with their connection with Zandra Rhodes.
I think that by the very fact that Freddie and Brian came round to me shows that they were people that had a very definite way of thinking and were brave enough to follow what they believed in, because it wasn't like women that make dresses would necessarily do their clothes. At the time it happened, it was just me making clothes for some guys in a band that were excited about putting them on and trying them out in front of the mirrors. But they weren't over, they weren't over peacock-like. They were just very professional.
I am forever searching high and low, but why does everybody tell me no? Neptune of the seas, an answer for me please. The lily of the valley doesn't go.
It was always very ambiguous. It wasn't overtly gay or anything like that. There was this what do they call it at the time? It was the word.
Well, they called it androgyny at the time, and
which most people never knew what it quite meant. But the New Musical Express used it a lot, and apparently that was the thing to be, darling.
And cast me from your spell. Let me go.
It was a bit odd, to say the least. I mean, although we'd had Bowie in the hunky-dory period, I mean, Mercury was a bit over the top.
I mean, you could see in the pictures, they looked pretty Queenie by any standard, and it was the aesthetic of the age. You've got to remember, dressing up and looking like a girl wasn't a big issue. You've also got to remember that Freddie was, well, I mean, I think his bisexuality was probably apparent to most of us, but again, it wasn't such a big issue because, being gay or bisexual was just very trendy at the time. But of course, Freddie was living with Mary then too, so he was still not quite out the door. Although when you look like Freddie and your band is called Queen and it's all your idea, then, it was like waving a big flag at everybody.
He was torn between, one thing and the other, and I think he felt guilty about the whole thing. And I think that was that was probably one of the most traumatic experiences for him.
There was always that something he was hiding, and I don't think it made him feel very good. I don't think he enjoyed hiding these things from me, and lying really to himself.
A real true friend for me has to be, has to be very strong and put up with me. And I think Mary's gone through just about everything, and so I can actually, she has the depth and the quality to actually sort of adapt to me and talk to me about very serious things. And she's about the only person I can think about. Otherwise, I just. I fend for myself, and I cross my hurdles in my own way.
He decided ultimately that he had to tell me that he was bisexual, and I knew that really he was trying, I think, to tell me that fundamentally he decided that he was gay.
Freddie and Mary lived together up until Bohemian Rhapsody days. Then Freddie bought his flat in Stafford Terrace and bought Mary the flat at the end of the road so that she was sort of close by all the time.
Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head, pulled my trigger, now he's dead. Just begun, but now I've gone and thrown it all away.
It was just such a weird song, and the minute I heard it, I thought, well, it's going to be #1 because it's so bizarre but so fantastic, so dense, so many ideas hurled into this thing, seemingly not making any sense, and yet it sticks in your head.
Nothing really matters.
I was in the control room while the three of them did the backing track for Bohemian Rhapsody, because it would normally be either guitar, bass and drums, or piano, bass and drums. So Rhapsody was piano, bass and drums. I was sitting there in the control room with Roy, and they're doing din 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 din. It's all these little gaps, and it was pretty hard for us to figure out what on earth he had in mind.
I see a little silhouette of a man. Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolts and lightning, very, very frightening me. Galileo, Figaro. Magnifico! I'm just a poor boy, nobody loves me. He's just a poor boy from a poor family, sparing his life from this monstrosity.
I remember being in the car with my dad and sister when we were like 6 years old or something like that, and singing along with the Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia. Thought it was really, it was funny. It was like a funny song when we were little kids.
Oh, Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia, Mamma Mia, let me go. Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me, for me, for me.
The record spent 9 weeks at #1. We saw it every week on Top of the Pops. And, people say, well, that must have been the first video. I mean, as I say, I would say Sgt. Pepper before it, rather Storyfields before it. But they had such an idea of how to present themselves. And they spent a long, long time, and it worked,
You look now at Bohemian Rhapsody, and it has been technically eclipsed. It's difficult for someone who was not there at the time to consider its impact. But at the time, the multiple faces and the various use of the screen were revolutionary, and it was a very, very exciting step forward. And it's one of the few moments in popular entertainment when you can say, yes, this form started there.
It was another sort of form of theatre coming through. I mean, in those early days, we sort of, I don't know why we did it, we just decided that we should sort of put it on film and let people see the film part of how Bohemian Rhapsody should be, And I think since then, we didn't know how it was going to be looked upon, how they were going to receive it, and it just sort of went crazy.
Obviously, we were the thing that was happening at the time, and big, and it was a big hit in America, and so we really were sort of cracking it at that time, and that was I suppose, one of the defining moments of our career.
One possible advantage that Queen had was they never had to live up to anybody's expectations, because while they were producing their work, they were not critically fashionable.
The press reacted to the kind of excess, really, the excess of the stage performances and perceived excess of the production values in the studio, the layered harmonies, layered guitars. I seem to remember them not taking too kindly to, but I mean, in both instances, that was the band, that was, if you don't like that, you don't like the band.
It's an odd thing. It doesn't exist so much in the rest of the world. But because of the clothes and because of I suppose, the perfectionism in what we did on record and on stage too, it was just always unfashionable in England to be that way.
There's a famous, relatively well-known article in the NME, a full-page article that said, "Is this man a prat?" The big picture of Fred wearing one of his outrageous stage outfits. And okay, but it was quite tough at the time.
That was obviously an article I wrote called "Is This Man a Prat?", where people were left to answer the questions themselves, and I think there was a resounding yes from NME's audience of 250,000. That was our sales at the time, And he was going on about things like, oh, you know, I've got a Nijinsky copy costume. And I think I said to him at the time, I think our readers, the only Nijinsky they know is a racehorse that I might have had a bet on.
So they got incredible stick. And Freddie was criticized severely at times because he was only interested in entertaining in an era when entertainment was not a value of the popular press.
I don't mind sort of actually genuine sort of well thought out criticism, you know. But I mean, of course, you're going to get you know, just people review our albums without even listening to them and things like that. But I mean, that's the way of the world. And before I used to get really mad and start tearing my hair out. But now I don't have any more sleepless nights. I'm just I learned to live with it.
There was a huge youth audience that was disenfranchised by what they saw as the royalty of rock, and Queen, with a name like Queen, were obviously at the pinnacle of that. And they just thought, oh, fuck this, you know, we want something that's a bit more real, that actually relates to us.
I am an antichrist. I am an anarchist.
Most of us were kind of encouraged and drawn into the fact that there was something quite new going on in England that didn't owe a debt particularly to the 60s or the early 70s or that heavy metal stuff. It was something quite unique.
The whole industry needs something like that. Every now and again you get a new phase and then they get a bit too easygoing, and then somebody new comes in, and then everybody who's gone before says, oh, we better make sure. And that's good. It's like getting a new, fresh injection. And I like that. It's good competition.
I think it did us quite a lot of good in the end, because on the next album, it was all around that period. We did an album called News of the World, which had a lot of harder stuff on it and slightly more raw. And I think it sort of kicked us up the backside a bit, actually.
Punk was very localized. It was really England and the East Coast and maybe the West Coast of America. Other than that, punk was a media event.
I don't think Queen felt intimidated by the punk rock era at all. I think the music press grabbed it as something refreshing and street cred. They love all that, you know. I mean, they love bands that have suffered in clubs and, you know, been struggling for years, which of course Queen weren't really like that at all. I mean, there they were going around, you know, living the life of millionaires, which they were.
I've paid my dues, time after time.
Why have one stretch Cadillac when you can have four? One for each of them instead of all in one, you know? It looks better, it looks more opulent. But that's what they've been like, you know, as a band, that's what they've wanted to be from the beginning.
We made sure it was fun, and sure we wasted lots of money making sure it was fun. But it was, you know, it was fun. I mean, most of it was hard work. And we'd have a really big semi-debauched party or decadent party, you know, occasionally, just to relieve the boredom.
We'll keep on fighting till the end.
I don't think you could ever have that kind of extravagance these days. I mean, boy, we did have some fun.
Oh yeah, I mean, they were great. I mean, yes, they're as wild as everybody says they were. Some of the things that are described just aren't true.
The story of the dwarves with the cocaine was a myth that went round, and certainly when I discussed it with Freddie, he never denied it. He would just laugh about it. So clearly there was some shenanigans going on with dwarves.
It sounds good to have a dwarf walking round with a bowl of cocaine on his head, doesn't it?
Yeah, I never saw one of those. Probably all gone by the time I got there.
You have to also understand that though the 70s, until AIDS kicked in, you know, to raise a horrible spectre, you are talking about no holds barred. You understand that was greatest period of decadence, if you like.
We actually sort of revelled in the decadent side of it for a period there, yeah, about 20 years.
I think there's a certain irony in We Are the Champions, but was an anthem that was then sang on the terraces, it was sang at sporting events, it was sang at political rallies, and there was Freddie Mercury who was trying to bring ballet to the masses. I remember one gig I saw, he toasted the audience and said, "May you all have champagne for breakfast." Probably the audience were on the dole or something like that, because times were bleak.
Queen did represent to the new wave and the embodiment of all the excess they were trying to sort of strip away. In 76 and 77, Queen, along with a lot of bands of their generation, suddenly found themselves incredibly unfashionable. But they survived that. They survived that extremely well, actually, and were about to have, particularly in America, the biggest success they'd had when Another One Bites the Dust went to #1.
Machine guns ready to go. Are you ready? Hey, are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Out of the doorway, the bullets rip. Down the beat, yeah.
I think around that time, Another One Bites the Dust, and that album had just gone from double platinum to quadruple platinum or whatever in a week. We were aware suddenly that Queen was the biggest thing probably globally for that second in time. You know, you suddenly have that feeling because it was everywhere in the world, and I think America clinched that.
It was a John Deacon song. Got that great bass, doom, doom, doom. Took them to, as they would say now, an urban audience, but actually it was black at that time, and it went R&B, and it's still, you know, still sampled on many black records.
Having had this massive sort of 4 million, 3.5, 4 million selling just in America record with Another One Bites the Dust, we sort of got a bit carried away and thought, oh, this could be our next sort of avenue. Not my favourite way to go, I have to say, but this sort of dance-orientated stuff.
There were several acts who should not have done disco records after disco had peaked, and Queen were amongst them. That was their one mistake, because that made them seem temporarily passé.
Body language.
So that lost us all our sort of Midwestern hard rocking audience, and then we went steadily down for a while there, I think, because of the fact that Freddie's sort of coming out, you know, thing. They didn't really like that, because they like their rock and roll a bit. Very heterosexual.
The Midwest of America suddenly perceived that Freddie might actually be gay, and that was shocking, and that was not really allowable, and it was a bit scary, so I think that contributed.
Look at me, I got a case of body language.
The look just didn't appeal. I mean, Freddie and a mustache, unless you were a gay man who liked that kind of image, wasn't that attractive. And there it went.
It's a process of growing up, you know, it's experience, and I just think at this point in time, I think if I had long hair and fingernails and wearing the things, I would look ridiculous. I mean, I looked ridiculous then, but it worked.
Anybody who didn't like a band because maybe the singer was campy or gay or whatever was an idiot.
I never saw Freddie as being openly gay. He was never that way unless he was with very close gay friends. Otherwise, he was very much the bisexual, the heterosexual.
It's very strange. I don't think most people cared, really. I mean, the media made such a big deal of it, but I don't think that people who were into the music really cared. That's my perception anyway. And all the girls who fancied Fred just didn't believe he was gay anyway.
You see, a lot of people will use Mary as the sort of cover, saying, "Oh well, no. If he was with her for so long, then he can't have been," and they'll leave it at that.
We're gonna do a few songs in the funk black category, whatever you call it. That doesn't mean we've lost our rock and roll feel, okay? This is staying power.
We were always quite lucky because if we were suddenly not so popular in one major sort of country, maybe, you know, we'd always seem to be popular somewhere else. So it's like swings and roundabouts. And, you know, when we sort of weren't as popular in America, and then we had this tremendous resurgence in South America. There's never a lot to complain about, but I think we got a bit jaded in the 80s, and we didn't quite know where we fitted in.
And I was hearing all sorts of horror stories about how they were having fights in dressing rooms. I've seen it happen with, not just with Queen, but with thousands of bands. You know, they've all got their own limos and they've all got their own private jets to take them places because none of them were talking to each other.
We did get albums together, but it was at the cost of so much time, so much money, so much pain that we should have realised, we should have got out.
So many groups split up because of personal differences. Queen somehow realized that this is an art and a business. This isn't about my personality against his personality or his personality. And they just stuck to it.
It was a golden goose, you know, and a goose which we had created.
The hardest thing is to actually, after all these years, is to actually maintain the level of success that you've achieved. That's the hardest thing. Because I think when you go all the way up, you know, the only place is to come down. So that's the hardest thing.
There was a period when they couldn't get a record into the top 10. They couldn't get the big hits again. And I think that lasted for certainly the early 80s.
Freddie didn't really want to do it at first. It was obvious it was going to be a great event, though. You know, Bob does such a great job selling things. I mean, he could sell you anything.
Of all the people I can think of on this bill, he was born to walk out on that stage in front of 1.6 billion people, which at the time I think was half the world population, go, darlings, you know. He was absolutely born to do that.
Everyone had bought their tickets for that show before they even knew we were on the bill, because we were a late edition. That wasn't a Queen audience. But they're all doing this bap-bap thing for Radio Gaga. They're all responding to everything. And it was a shot in the arm for us. It was amazing. I remember thinking, wow, this is really something we didn't expect.
They just had it so right. They just got the plot so right. In my memory, it's one long medley of hits, and they just did the big hooks in the hits. And there were so many of them. And like the crowd were just mad. And like, I absolutely thought to myself, this is the best thing I've heard all day.
I'm on record as saying they stole the show. I mean, they completely blew everyone off the stage. Everyone was probably a bit omnipotent about the event, you know, and because of the seriousness of the subject matter and raising money for all the people that were starving. And Queen just came on and just let rip, and Freddie said, right, you've paid this money, I'm going to entertain you. And I think he came on with that attitude, and he just went for it. And I just think at that particular time of the day, they just blew everybody off the stage. And it was great. He came back into my trailer afterwards, and I said, no one's going to follow that. No way. Unbelievable. It was one of the best performances they've ever done.
Everybody that does a performance, I mean, they like people to say that it's good or whatever, but I mean, this was like a very unique event, and to have, you know, people say that we were so good in terms of all the creme de la creme of the music was, that's quite an achievement. So I think it's something that sort of, well, definitely, it sort of injected some new fuel into our bodies.
We suddenly realised that, you know, that we were very popular again, and we'd sort of forgotten that, you know, you forget, you get used to living with things. And it was great. It was a really enjoyable, uplifting day.
I think it galvanised us into going back in the studio and believing in ourselves in a way which we hadn't before. It's a curious thing to say, isn't it? But I think we did have a new belief in ourselves after that.
If it's all left to one person to come up with the goods every time, it's difficult in a band situation. You get the animosity and the jealousy and everything. But the fact that they all contributed and they all wrote songs and they all ended up on the albums is what kept them together. I mean, I think they had their fights and everything like that. It's much more difficult to be in a band than it is to be a solo artist, I can tell you that.
It still doesn't scan. No, sing it, okay, sing it.
One true vision.
You missed out on the whole bit. Of course it fits like that.
All
It's
right,
like an edit.
Just one true vision.
Just
One man, one goat, one true religion. One dump, one turd, two tits, John Deacon. Yeah, 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 yeah. Chicken feed, babe. One heart, one soul, one sex position.
It's been a while since we actually did a tour. The last thing we did was Live Aid, and that was just a one-off thing. It's sort of, I don't know, I mean, I have to sort of do this tour and tell you, but it was fun.
One of the great things that Freddie was able to do in a concert was to be that small person who's made himself into a king. He's probably not the world's most good-looking guy. He's not the world's most powerful guy, but he has made himself into what he dreamed he could be.
Thank you, beautiful people.
At the end of the Magic Tour, biggest tour we've ever done, finishing up with Nebworth after 2 nights at Wembley Stadium, he said, I don't want to do this anymore. It was kind of uncharacteristic, because Freddie was always up for everything and very strong, very optimistic. The fact that he was quite definite about the fact that he didn't want to do it was something different. And we thought, well, maybe it's just a phase he's going through, or maybe there's something wrong. I remember having that thought in my head. But you pushed that thought out, and we did for years after that.
His GP telephoned me and said, can you get Freddie to call me? I need to speak to him quite urgently. I spoke to Freddie and said, this person needs to speak to you, can you contact them? He didn't contact him. I went back. And it just by chance, I was told of why this person needed to speak to Freddie.
And then one day, quite a lot later, he decided he just had to sort of come clean, and we all went to see him. And he said, come round, I got something to tell you, you know. And that's when he actually sort of told us all. We were completely completely devastated, really.
And he said, look, you probably know what I'm dealing with. I don't want to talk about it ever again. I just want to get on and make music until I fucking drop.
I want it all. I want it all. I want it all. And I want it now.
I don't want any sympathy. I don't want any special treatment. I don't want anyone to know.
I think with anything like that, with AIDS, even with cancer, whatever, it's up to the person to... They shouldn't feel sort of pressure to tell anybody anything. You tell who you want, when you want. It isn't anybody's right to know.
I don't think the general public knew that Freddie was sick until near the end. The records kept coming out, and any group that's huge has financial reason not to tour every year. And people probably thought, oh, they'll get around to it some year.
They've sold more than 80 million albums, they've played before more than 6 million people, and they've had 16 consecutive hits. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, the top band of the 80s are Queen.
Thank you. I've been delegated by the boys to say a couple of words. I'd just like to say, after all these years, contrary to what you may think, we do very much appreciate that you still appreciate us. And we hope to be performing some more miracles for you very soon in 1990 and beyond. Thank you very much.
Freddie's greatest wish was to keep it going, and which is why we did the Innuendo album, really. I mean, he was really bad then. But it got him through the day knowing that he had something to do, and you know, we very much stuck together at that time. That was a good period in a sense, because it gave us a very feeling of united band, you know, and sort of backs to the wall and a big stum all around, you know.
Here we are in the studio making this album, and we're not even sure if Freddie can finish it because he's been told by his doctors he may not make it to the end. So we're kind of on borrowed time, and Freddie will come in for short periods and then disappear. So you're trying to construct all this stuff so that when he comes in, he can make the most of his time.
He was determined to just carry on as far as he could, and that's why the video of These Are the Days of Our Lives is so moving. You can see the illness there, but you can also see the determination.
Sometimes I get to feeling I was back in the old days, long ago, when we were kids, when we were young, things seemed so perfect, you know. The days were endless, we were crazy, we were young. The sun was always shining, we just lived for fun. Sometimes it seems like lately, I just don't know, the rest of my life's been just a show. Those were the days.
He got worse and worse and worse, and in the end we were just visiting him at home. And then towards the very end, it was quite apparent that he didn't have long. And the house was surrounded by cameramen and press and all that. And I was actually on my way to visit him when he rang me up and said, "Don't come," you know. And that was quite. Even then, it was a shock knowing it was coming. But it's you know, it's always a shock, isn't it?
The music world has been paying tribute to Freddie Mercury, the lead singer with the rock group Queen. He died last night, just 24 hours after saying he had AIDS.
Fans at his home in West London mourned the best-known British star to have died from the disease. But AIDS charities believe his greatest gift to his fans was to have openly admitted he was a sufferer.
He chose to go on living his life, to go on being productive, really right up
until he was physically incapable of doing so. And I think that benefited everybody, and certainly was right for people with AIDS to be able to say, look, there's a man who, even with this illness, carried on working, and that's what I intend to do.
I still think that people will remember him forever. Because after all these years, people write to me and they think of him that he is one of the greatest.
We're incredibly proud of everything that Freddie stood for, and we feel like his spirit's definitely still with us. Thanks a lot. And Roger has been working very hard, and Roger has a special announcement to make.
Yeah, we hope that a lot of you will be able to join us on April the 20th at Wembley Stadium for a celebration of Freddie's life and career. A lot of friends are coming, and you're all welcome. Please join us.
Good evening, Wembley and the world! We are here tonight to celebrate the life and work and dreams of one Freddie Mercury.
Because of what happened to him in the press and all the sort of harrowing incidents that happened, and people camping outside his house with cameras and stuff like that, I think people were so cheesed off with it that they really wanted the concert to be not just a memory of Freddie, but just to say, listen, we must have more compassion. The AIDS it's here to stay for the time being. We've just lost one of our greatest musical figures from it, and it's time we pulled together and understood this disease a little bit more.
Show must go on. Yeah, show must go on. Inside my heart is breaking. My makeup may be flaking, but my smile still stays on.
In terms of longevity and career popularity, yes, they are up there. And the result is they're a far more important group and a far more successful group than they ever seemed at any moment during their career.
People will cover their songs forever and ever. Bands will pay tribute to them. It would be lovely to see another Queen record from somewhere, but it's very difficult. How do you replace Freddie? Maybe it would be nice for Queen to do a record and get guest vocalists for every track. That would be a way of doing it.
That music needs to be played, and it should be played. I wouldn't go with the celeb lead singer. I'd find a kid who's got the range of Freddie and who can do justice to those songs.
Show must go on. The show must go on.
We've been sort of talking with one another recently quite a lot, and I think we might do some work with the odd other person, maybe, occasionally on some original material, which might be interesting, and it might not. Can't tell, really.
I feel very happy that I know that we got into people's private lives in a way that they enjoy. We contributed to those moments when they feel uplifted, and that's a great thing to be a part of.
My soul is painted like the wings of butterflies. Fairy tales of yesterday will grow but never die.